Hello and welcome to the Daily Faded. My name is Hetz, and this is where we get faded and we talk about the news and politics of the day. I didn't have my microphone in front of me. This is what happens when you combine cannabis with politics live stream, is you forget to do things like put the microphone in front of your mouth. Your speech hole. I'm going to have to do something during tonight's show I don't believe I've actually done before, which is I'm going to have to clean out and pack my pipe in the middle of the show because I wasn't able to quite smoke all of it. You see, there's just a little bit left in there. So I hope you'll join me, either taking a toke or having a drink, having a glass of milk, whatever it is you like at night. All right, so the Daily Faded number 68. Today is July 1st, 2020. It is hard to believe. Well, the good news is we're halfway through 2020, the year of complete and utter catastrophe shit. So we're halfway through this year, so that's good. I definitely liked 2019 better than 2020 because I was able to hope that Bernie Sanders would be president. At least politically, I liked it better. Personally, I actually like 2020 better than 2019, but that's a whole other story for a different show. So our usual catch up on, we're going to talk about shutting down the reopening tonight and a bunch of other stuff. I've got too much stuff to talk about. Worldwide, we're almost at 10.8 million confirmed cases worldwide of COVID-19. Over 518,000 deaths confirmed from COVID-19 worldwide. The United States, at last check, was 2,777,652 cases of COVID-19, with 49,799 reported today, which I believe will be a new high if that number turns out to be correct. Although the website I use is a little bit different than the one that a lot of the media uses. So we'll see what the New York Times and Washington Post are reporting tomorrow. We are at 130,784 deaths from the coronavirus here in the United States. 662 deaths in the last 24 hours. That's the day before was 1,300 or something because a bunch of unreported deaths were suddenly reported in one big group. So yesterday was a little anomalous of the trend, which has been 600, 500, 350. So now 662. That's again, we have to look at the trend over several days, but it's not down in the 300s as I believe our lowest number was. Yesterday, so if we had 49,000 cases today, then that will be the new record. Yesterday, we had a record 48,000 new cases, which was our highest single day total yet. And 48,000 new cases, that's halfway to Fauci's prediction of 100,000 cases a day, which is a terrifying prediction. By the way, I'm sorry I wasn't on last night. These back problems are not going away, and I just wasn't able to sit up and do the show. And I don't think I can do the show lying down in my bed with a heating pad and an ice pack. 8 states, Alaska, California, Arizona, Georgia, Idaho, South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Texas all recorded record caseloads yesterday. As Fauci pointed out, I believe this was yesterday or the day before, maybe it was yesterday. It was yesterday when he said 100,000 cases per day. He pointed out that outbreaks in any part of the country put the rest of the country at risk because obviously people travel around within the country, and we're all in this together. The United States has 4% of the world's population and 25% of the world's coronavirus cases and deaths. More than 25% of the deaths. I think it was the head of the WHO or someone important from the WHO I saw saying that while some countries are making progress with their epidemics, not the United States, that globally the pandemic is speeding up and getting worse. You know, it's interesting because we always hear about how we have the best healthcare in the world in the United States. And I came across an interesting fact today, which is the Global Health Security Index ranked countries for their healthcare, access. U.S. ranked 175 out of 195 countries for healthcare access. So there's 174 countries that are better at providing healthcare to their citizens than the United States. Think about that. Think about that. California, I'm sure you've heard, has closed indoor dining, bars, museums, zoos, wine tasting rooms, museums. Did I say museums? Museums and card rooms. And today was the fourth straight day in a row when LA testing labs have confirmed more than 2,000 cases per day. There's something going around that I think that I know is a hoax. But hold on one sec. When the pipe starts to get hot, you know that you're almost out of bud in there, because it means nothing is burning in the bowl and the flame is going straight to the bowl. So I don't think I talked about this, but we had a viral video come out of our own brand new North Hollywood Trader Joe's that just opened last Friday. And there was a viral video of a woman throwing things all over the store because she's being asked to wear a face mask. And it turns out that video was a hoax or a setup of some sort, because people have pictures of her in line before the incident happened wearing a face mask. And if you look closely, she's holding a face mask in her hand. So people are really freaking out about this whole face mask thing. And at some point, I will be able to just show you images like this, but let's see if you can see that. Face mask exempt card. I'm going to read it to you. I am exempt from any ordinance requiring face mask usage in public. Wearing a face mask poses, big misspelling there, poses a mental and or physical risk to me. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, I am not required to disclose my condition to you. Department of Justice ADA violation reporting number 800-514-0301. If found in violation of the ADA, you could face steep penalties. Organizations and businesses can be fined up to $75,000 for your first violation and $150,000 for any subsequent violations. Denying access to your business organization will be also reported to FTBA for further actions, whatever the FTBA is. Yeah, so people think that they can wave a face mask exempt card. I wonder if that's actually going to work for anyone. I'm only going to touch on this quickly. Trump tweeted this morning that painting Black Lives Matter on Fifth Avenue is a hate symbol and that it denigrates a luxury avenue. Black Lives Matter denigrates a luxury avenue, he says. This coming from a man who denied rentals to black people, who got his first mention in the New York Times in a case where he and his father were defending themselves against charges of denying people housing based on their race. But looks, this is a perfect example of how the race issue and the class issue are connected, right? Because he likes Fifth Avenue the way it is for fancy rich people. Fuck Fifth Avenue. And you know, and obviously de Blasio is trolling Trump by just like the mayor of DC did, is trolling Trump by putting it on Fifth Avenue right by Trump Tower. But that it denigrates, to say Black Lives Matter, that denigrates the luxury avenue. It denigrates the luxury avenue. It's not that police brutality denigrates black people. It's not that Trump tweets denigrate black people. It's that the avenue is more important than saying Black Lives Matter. The street, the stores, the reputation of Fifth Avenue is more important than Black Lives Matter to Donald Trump. Now, I posed this question to my friend today, which is, does Donald Trump even understand what the phrase means? You know, maybe he's bought into it hook, line, and sinker that they're really terrorists. You know, I mean, I guess it's terrifying to Trump to see the empowerment of black people, or something that he sees as the disempowerment of white people, like cutting police budgets. He also complained that the supposed $1 billion cut to the NYPD is an affront to law enforcement. Well, I have news for you, Trump. Why don't you read the fucking news and look at that $1 billion cut to the NYPD police budget and look and see how it's doing things like transferring the school police budget into the education budget. So that reduces the police budget, but it doesn't change the number of cops in schools or the number of cops on the streets. In fact, with all of these accounting tricks that they've played to pretend that they're taking $1 billion out of the NYPD budget, there's only one police activity that we've been told is actually going to be curtailed by this change. And it's one class at their police academy will no longer be taught. That's the only effective change that the so-called budget cut to the NYPD has. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Trump tonight. And I'm going to read you from two different articles because we had some late news hit the presses, whatever, hit the interwebs. I don't know. All right. I'm going to be cleaning my pipe while I talk to you. Raw story. This is from this morning. New York judge temporarily blocks release of Mary Trump's tell-all book about the president. Too much and never enough. How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man was set to be released in August. Moved up to July. President Donald Trump and his siblings fought to block a tell-all book by Mary Trump, the daughter of his late brother Fred Trump Jr., on Tuesday. A judge granted the Trumps' attempt to block the book from being released. The judge agreed that the tell-all violates a non-disclosure agreement that Mary Trump signed after the settlement of Fred Trump Sr.'s estate. Very important with a titanium alloy pipe that you have to have some rubbing alcohol to clean it with, because all of that resin builds up and blocks the passages in the pipe, which is probably not a good sign of what I'm doing to my lungs, but I'm not going to think about that right now. See how nice and clean you can get the inside of the pipe? I just showed it to you full of ash. Now it's nice and clean. Check to make sure we're getting good airflow. Could be better, actually. So we're going to take the pipe apart. See this? Take the pipe apart. I'm so not going to finish my stories tonight. We're talking a little bit more about weed tonight. See, this comes apart, and you see all of the built up resin in here. So just a touch of rubbing alcohol on a paper towel. I'm sure I should be using a cloth towel, but what do I know? And we get some of that newer resin off. The older resin is built up, and I didn't clean the pipe as regularly as I do. I didn't used to clean it as regularly as I do now. I wish I did, because these Journey pipes, this is the Journey 3, which I highly recommend. They can stay very clean if you take good care of them, and can last a long time. They also come with a nifty carrying case that even has space for your lighter. And then I get these rags that my wife caught me throwing them away in the trash. It was like, that rag really, really reeks of cannabis. Could you please throw it away in the big black trash can instead of... Okay. The judge agreed that the tell-all violates a non-disclosure agreement that Mary Trump signed after the settlement of Fred Trump Sr.'s estate. It's an early decision and a tentative win for the president and his siblings, who were being outed for the way that they fought over their father's money leading up to his death. Among other things in the book, Mary Trump fesses up to being the source of tax documents that the New York Times printed from the president, who has refused to turn over his financial documents. Ms. Trump also claims the president was involved in fraudulent tax schemes and had scored more than $400 million in cash in today's dollars from his father's estate after he died. Trump has claimed that he made his fortune after his father gave him just $10 million. Poor little Trump. He only got $10 million. Or was it $400 million? We'll never know. The book, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man, was set to be released in July. This ruling merely puts a pause on the release until the case is ultimately decided. And I also wanted to add this little piece from the Daily Beast, because I read a bunch of different sources on this. Will reveal that, because I wanted to see how much detail we got. According to the Daily Beast, Mary Trump's book will reveal that Ms. Trump was one of the main sources behind the New York Times reporting into Trump's fraudulent tax schemes. The book will also reveal how Donald J. Trump and his father neglected Mary's father, Fred Trump Jr., as he descended into an alcohol addiction that would ultimately kill him, and how the president and his siblings cut off medical benefits to one nephew in the family who had cerebral palsy as payback for challenges to the Trump patriarch's will. Cut off medical benefits to someone in your family with cerebral palsy. You see, that's the thing. That's the thing about employer-based healthcare, right? Not that that's employer-based healthcare, but the thing about employer-based healthcare is they can always turn it off on you. They can always decide they don't want to pay as much and your premiums are going to go up. And they know that they've got you backed into a corner because you can't afford to lose your health insurance. It's a fucking scheme. It's a way for employers to have one up, have more power over the employee. Anyone who's interested in labor rights should support Medicare for all, because it frees up unions to negotiate for better wages, retirement, and other perks and essentials. Now, the problem is this lovely Moondrops is really sticky, and so it's all stuck in grinder, and it's hard to get them out of there. I need like a toothpick or something to get it out from these little sharp, pointy things that grind it up. Washington Post had an update on this story tonight. A New York court on Wednesday lifted a temporary restraining order against the publication of a book by President Trump's niece, enabling publisher Simon & Schuster to continue printing and distributing the explosive insider account by Mary L. Trump. President Trump's brother, Robert, filed a petition last week asking that Mary Trump and the publisher be prevented from publishing the book, citing a confidentiality agreement signed by Mary Trump 2 decades ago as part of a settlement of an inheritance dispute. On Tuesday, a state Supreme Court judge agreed to impose a restraining order to allow the parties to present their arguments next week, raising doubts about whether it would be published. However, the Supreme Court's appellate division on Wednesday lifted the restraining order that had been imposed on Simon & Schuster, while leaving in place the one regarding Mary Trump, that effectively enables the publisher to continue distributing copies of the book in preparation for the planned July 28th publication, even as the overall merits of the case are argued. Now, I have never wanted to read any of the Trump books. I have respect, I guess, for Bob Woodward. He certainly had an interesting career and done some great work, but I didn't want to read Fear. Trump in the White House, the book he wrote, I had no interest in it. And I don't know why anyone still talks to Bob Woodward. Why would anyone in Trump's orbit talk to Bob Woodward? That seems like a mistake to me. I didn't want to read Russian Roulette by Michael Isikoff and David Korn, who are two journalists that I used to respect, but they both went so far down the Russiagate hole that I lost all respect for both of them. Fire and Fury by Michael Wolff. That was a pretty hot one for a news cycle or two. And he did his round on the talk shows. And he's a fucking Hollywood writer. And he didn't have recordings. He didn't have backup. It was a sloppy book. Trumpocracy. There's another one by David Frum. So the guy who wrote the Axis of Evil speech for George W. Bush, I want to get that guy's take on Trump. Are you fucking kidding me? He's a propagandist for a war criminal and an overall scumbag. Completely led us down the path to war in Iraq. And look at how stuck we are in the Middle East today. So fuck off, David Frum. A Warning by Anonymous. Yo, Anonymous, I got something to tell you. What you're doing is really not all that brave or cool. It's just not. You should come out like a man or a woman, like a person, like a dignified human being. You should come out and put your name to it and say what you mean. I didn't want to read A Very Stable Genius by two writers I'm vaguely familiar with, but I'm only vaguely familiar with them, so fuck them too. Fuck them off. Fuck them all. And then there was A Higher Loyalty by James Comey. Now that one I really didn't want to read because Comey is not a good guy. Comey is not a good guy. Now, I'm not sure what I think about the whole Hillary emails thing. I don't think James Comey cost Hillary Clinton the election. I think he was one of 50 factors that cost her the election. But I don't think you can say, oh, it was Comey. But Comey's FBI met with private intelligence contractors in was it South Dakota or in North Dakota? I'm sorry, in North Dakota, during the when the water protectors had their standoff with the Dakota Access Pipeline people over building the Dakota Access Pipeline, and the bad guys, I'll call them that, the pipe company people, hired private intelligence contractors, and they did reconnaissance on the water protectors. They tried to infiltrate the water protectors. They were caught on video doing that. And the FBI was in regular conversation with them about what they were doing and was totally cool with it. So, fuck you, James Comey. He's also part of the general FBI plot to stop all leftists, which has always been a core function of the FBI, whether it's the anti-communist crusades of J. Edgar Hoover, or whether it's killing Fred Hampton, or trying to blackmail Martin Luther King. Yeah. Unhinged by Omarosa. That was another one. Do you remember that one? Does anyone take that seriously? Sean Spicer's book. I don't know the title of Sean Spicer's book, but why would anyone think that Sean Spicer could write a book? And certainly not, of all the Trump books, the one I definitely won't read is The Room Where It Happened by John Bolton, because John Bolton is one of the war criminals for whom David Frum was lying. And I saw just a headline. I don't know if it was on Salon.com or Slate.com, one of those. And it said the main villain of John Bolton's book is John Bolton. I thought that was interesting. But this Mary Trump book will make me reconsider. Now, that said, I've got a lot of reading to do. I've bought a lot of books lately, including the Dungeons and Dragons Monsters Manual. So I've got a lot of reading to do, but I'm curious about this book because I'm much more curious about the psychology of Donald Trump and what turned him into such a monster. How did he become this deranged, psychotic, lunatic, racist? And I think that book is more likely to shed interesting insight on Trump than any of these gossip mongering books. And look, I mean, the excerpts from the gossip mongering books, you know, maybe they're true, maybe they're not true. I suspect most of them are probably true. Even John Bolton's, I think, are probably true. John Bolton's book, he wrote that the worst decision he'd ever seen a president make was when Donald Trump refused to attack Iran after they supposedly shot down one of our drones. He said that was the worst judgment a president had ever shown. This from the guy who led the charge into Iraq. Oh my God, that's rich. That's a reason not to read that fucking book. You know, but the idea of a Trump, someone with the name Trump, who is the extended family of Donald Trump and knows the inside stories and knows the inside details and writes a book with that title, I'm curious. By the way, the Russian bounty Afghanistan story is propaganda. It's complete and total propaganda. Don't believe it. The NSA says it's not true. The CIA says it's true. The NSA says it's not true. Senators were briefed today on the Intelligence Committee, and they said they got no information. The intelligence community never tells us the truth about anything. They told us there was election fraud in Bolivia, but it was a coup. We know now it was a coup. We know now the election was not rigged. It's been reviewed, it's been looked at, and the OAS's numbers were off. The OAS's number, their tallying process or whatever, was off. So they lied to us about weapons of mass destruction. They lied to us. They've lied to us for 19 years about every detail in the war in Afghanistan. When they've lied about every other detail about the war in Afghanistan, we saw that in what the Washington Post printed, the Afghanistan papers. Why should we believe this? Why? One of my favorite people, Medea Benjamin, the founder of Code Pink, the anti-war activist, tweeted, "Curious that allegations re Russia giving Taliban money to kill U.S. soldiers comes just in time to sabotage talks re the last nuclear treaty between the U.S. and Russia, the withdrawal of more U.S. troops from Afghanistan, and peace in Syria. Sounds like fake news to me." I am down with Medea Benjamin. The other thing, too, is that it's being pushed so hard by the Russiagaters because they want Russiagate back so bad. Russiagate was so much more comfortable than all of this stuff that we're going through right now. For our last story tonight, I'm just going to tell you about something you missed that I wish you hadn't. No, it's probably good that you missed it, which was Joe Biden gave a speech with reporters yesterday in public, reading off a teleprompter. And when I first started watching it, I thought, okay, given how deranged Trump sounds every time he talks, Uncle Joe reading from a teleprompter in a very boring voice with less inflection than Mr. Rogers. I've been having trouble sleeping. That might help put me to sleep. But it was way more. You definitely go, well, I'd prefer that guy than the other one. Even if you're like me and you think Joe Biden is not a good candidate and won't make a good president. So he was totally sleepy. Hold on one sec. And I thought, though, even though he was a little sleepy in his presentation when he was reading from the teleprompter, and he was outlining his COVID-19 plan, which, by the way, was insufficient to the task at hand. At least I thought. But then I thought, okay, well, he's under control. It's going okay. Then he starts getting asked questions by the press. And there was one question about campaigning during COVID-19. And Joe Biden, he actually said, he goes like this. He's back here. And he leans in and he goes, "I really like being out there campaigning. I like the people. I like to get the feel of the people." And he raises his hands like this. I was just like, ew. I was waiting for him to say, "and sniff their hair" next. But then they asked him about Princeton and Woodrow Wilson and Confederate statues. And he was like, well, there's 3 categories, right? First, there's Princeton. They can do whatever they want because it's a private university. And so no comment on removing Woodrow Wilson's name. And then there's the, I had to learn a good Joe Biden impression. Then there's the Confederate statues, and of course they should all come down. But then the founding fathers, no, the good ones, we should keep them. So it doesn't matter to Joe Biden that Woodrow Wilson resegregated resegregated the public sector, right? The civil service. He resegregated the civil service, which had been desegregated. There was a great interview on Intercepted, Jeremy Scahill interviewing I think his name was Nick Estes, a Native American historian, Nick Estes, and he was talking about Mount Rushmore, and he said, so there's all of this, like, white America wants to keep the founding fathers. They don't want to get rid of George Washington or Thomas Jefferson just because they were slave owners. And what Nick Estes points out is they were not only slave owners, they were also criminals who committed genocide against Native American people. That's how General George Washington became so well known, is basically for killing Indians. And even during the Revolutionary War, they launched offensives against Indian communities they thought might flank them while they were fighting the British. Then he talked about Thomas Jefferson, and one of the reasons Thomas Jefferson did the Louisiana Purchase was because he had a plan to move all the indigenous people, all the Indians as they called them, out of the land east of the Mississippi River into a territory west of the Mississippi River, which would eventually become Oklahoma as the plan evolved over the generations. So Jefferson was all about wars with Indians, and he was all about the removal of American Indians from their ancestral lands. Lincoln, on the memorial, was also very bad on Indian issues, and he actually is considered to have committed the one of the worst mass murders of American Indians when he executed 38 Dakota Indians for supposed rebellion. And even Teddy Roosevelt, who's the fourth president on Mount Rushmore, wonderful progressive, right? And friend to the Negro and the red man, right? I use those words to reference the time, obviously, in which Teddy Roosevelt lived. But the national park system that Teddy Roosevelt created was founded on the proposition of removing the indigenous people from those places to make it a place of beauty for white people to go look at the beauty without any of the people who originally lived there. So all four of the presidents on Mount Rushmore are not good on issues relating to the genocide of Native Americans. And the Black Hills, where Mount Rushmore is, the Black Hills are a sort of a place of origin, place of spiritual importance for over 50 tribes. And I believe he was saying the Lakota. I think it's the Lakota Nation that has said, Trump, you don't have the right to do your 4th of July celebration at Mount Rushmore, at what you call Mount Rushmore, because based on these two treaties, and they cite two 19th century treaties, that land is Lakota land, not U.S. government land. So we didn't even have the right to fucking build Mount Rushmore, to create Mount Rushmore. That started with a gold miner who was trespassing on Lakota land without permission, looking for gold. And somehow got the idea to do Mount Rushmore. I don't know the rest of the details. Anyway, I hope you guys have had fun tonight. I will be back tomorrow night. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to my Patreon patrons for keeping the show going, at least a little part of it. Appreciate that. And I'll see you tomorrow night. Peace out.